Has Dean Ambrose finally broken the silence we all knew was coming? Tonight, the WWE Universe is stunned, not just by the shocking confirmation that Seth Rollins is officially out of SummerSlam due to a devastating knee injury, but by what's being described as an unfiltered, emotional response from the man who once called Rollins his brother. Dean Ambrose, once the wild card of the Shield, has resurfaced with words that feel less like a statement, and more like a goodbye. In a business built on betrayal, on showdowns, and scripted lines, there are rare moments that feel too raw to be manufactured. This is one of those moments. Because when Dean Ambrose, a man who has made a career of walking away from the noise, chooses to speak, the entire locker room listens, and tonight, they're silent. The injury itself was already enough to shift the balance of power in WWE. Seth Rollins, the visionary, the architect, the reigning heartbeat of Monday Night Raw, collapsed during what should have been a routine segment. But the X-ray told another story. Torn ligaments. Cartilage damage. Surgery scheduled. SummerSlam? Off the table. Return timeline? 9 months, at best. WWE issued the press release. Triple H addressed it on air. Becky Lynch held back tears, but it wasn't until Ambrose's voice cracked through the silence that the weight of the moment truly hit. Not just for the fans, but for the history, the brotherhood, that Seth and Dean once shared. A bond forged in fists, in betrayal, in blood. The kind of bond that isn't broken by title belts, but sometimes is by time. What Dean said wasn't polished. It wasn't corporate. It wasn't even expected. Sources say the message wasn't part of any storyline, wasn't cleared through PR, and wasn't filmed in some flashy backstage vignette. It was recorded in a dim-lit locker room. One take. One voice. One truth. I didn't think I'd say this, Dean started. But when I heard the news about Seth's knee, I didn't think about wrestling. I thought about the night we drove 12 hours from Philly to Cincinnati with a trunk full of Ring of Honor merch and nothing but gas station hot dogs and big dreams. That's the thing about Ambrose. When he speaks, it's not for headlines. It's for memory. He went on, you don't just forget what it feels like to build something from nothing. You don't forget when you stood next to a guy in your first WrestleMania main event and you both knew, win or lose, you were made for this. And now he's benched. Because sometimes this business doesn't give you warning signs. It just snaps your body like a twig and says, try again in a year. There was a pause in the clip. A long one. You could hear him exhale, like the kind of breath you take when you're holding back something that hurts. We've fought. We've hated each other. We've stolen titles. We've burned bridges. But Seth Rollins is still my brother, he said. And seeing him go down like that? That's not how this chapter should have ended. No one expected Dean Ambrose to show up like this. He's been gone. Not just from WWE, but from this kind of moment. Ambrose has always been the guy who disappears when the lights get too bright. The man who walked away from WrestleMania main events, from fanfare, from legacy. He chose silence over spectacle, but not tonight. Tonight, he spoke, and maybe that says more than any scripted promo ever could, because Seth's injury isn't just about missing SummerSlam. It's about a seismic shift in the WWE universe. It's about the disappearance of a main event player, a locker room leader, a workhorse. And more importantly, it's about what happens when the men who built the Shield are left to watch one of their own fall. Fans remember the triple fist bump. The SWAT vests. The chaos. The betrayal. They remember when Dean turned on Seth, when Seth turned on Roman, and when blood turned into bad business. But they also remember what it felt like when those three men stood shoulder to shoulder, rewriting the DNA of WWE in real time. Dean Ambrose never said goodbye when he left. He vanished. No farewell tour. No tears. But tonight, in this cryptic message, it almost sounded like a goodbye to what once was. I've had time to think, Ambrose said. Maybe too much time. And I keep going back to that moment in 2014, backstage after that 6-man tag in Chicago. Seth's ribs were bruised. Roman's nose was busted. I was bleeding from the mouth. And we were all smiling like idiots. Because we knew we were unstoppable. He shook his head in the clip. And now, he asked, looking into the lens. Now we're ghosts. It's a line that's already going viral. Now we're ghosts, because that's what it feels like for many fans. That the Shield, the most dominant faction of their era, has become a ghost story. Fragments of a time when passion, violence, and brotherhood bled through the TV screen every Monday night. With Rollins out, Ambrose's words feel less like nostalgia, and more like an obituary. WWE officials reportedly had no idea Ambrose would address the injury. Some insiders claim Triple H is livid, not because of what was said, but because of what it unlocks. That Pandora's box of Shield emotions. That question, could Dean be coming back? But Ambrose didn't promise a return. He didn't call out Roman. He didn't hype a match. He simply said, I'll be watching. And sometimes, those words are more chilling than a challenge, because when a man like Dean Ambrose watches, he doesn't just watch. He waits. He plans. He remembers, and that's where this gets even more complicated. Sources backstage say the locker room is rattled. Seth's absence leaves a vacuum. There's no number one contender, no anchor for Monday Night Raw. With CM Punk suspended, and Roman isolated on SmackDown, everything feels like it's shifting too fast. Too soon. And now, amid the chaos, Ambrose's voice rings out like a ghost in the machine. The Shield, for all its glory, has always been built on friction. On three different visions of greatness. Rollins, the architect. Reigns, the tribal chief. Ambrose, the lunatic fringe. Each man chose a path. Each man tasted gold. Each man betrayed the other. But tonight's message isn't about betrayal. It's about loss, because sometimes in wrestling, the saddest turns aren't when you get stabbed in the back. They're when the crowd chants your name, and you can't walk out of the curtain. And that's Seth Rollins right now. Ambrose closed his message with a line that fans are already quoting, tweeting, re-editing into tribute videos. He said, we built this place brick by brick, match by match, and now, one of those bricks just broke. You can replace the match. You can fake the promo. But you can't replace the man. Silence followed. Then the clip cut to black. No logo. No signature. Just silence. For WWE fans who followed the Shield since day one, this moment feels like a funeral without a body. A curtain call without the music. SummerSlam is weeks away, but already it feels like the air's been sucked out of the main event picture, and perhaps the most haunting part, Dean Ambrose didn't have to say much. He just had to show up, because when a ghost finally speaks, you listen, and when that ghost is Dean Ambrose, you wonder what he's planning next. And as Seth Rollins begins what could be the longest rehab of his career, and as the lights continue to shine on a ring he can't stand in, there's one truth no one can ignore. The brotherhood might be broken, but the pain still speaks, and tonight, it spoke with Dean Ambrose's voice. The wrestling world is still shaking from the blow. Not just from Seth Rollins' injury, but from what Dean Ambrose's reaction truly signals. Because if you listen closely, his message wasn't just one of mourning. It was a warning. A rumbling beneath the surface that something bigger is coming. And at the center of that storm, is the third brother, Roman Reigns. Until now, Roman has remained silent. Isolated. Watching from the island of relevancy, untouched, unbothered, unmoved. But make no mistake, Rollins' exit has altered the chessboard. Because while Seth may be out of SummerSlam physically, his shadow now stretches far beyond the surgery table. And both Dean and Roman are standing in it. What happens when one Shield brother falls? The others feel the tremor, and for all the bad blood, all the betrayals, all the unspoken words, there is a bond between these three men that not even title belts, ego, or creative directions can destroy. It's built in the fire of their shared past. Burned into them like scars. According to backstage sources, Reigns was informed of Seth's withdrawal minutes before the public announcement. No warning. No soft landing. Just a call from WWE's top brass, breaking the news like shattering glass. He didn't say much, one insider reported. Just listened. Then he said, that's not how his story ends. And hung up. There's a reason those words matter, because when Roman Reigns speaks, especially now, every syllable carries the weight of the dynasty he built. And for him to acknowledge Seth in that way, it hints at something few thought possible, that even now, Roman still feels it, the brotherhood, the betrayal, the break and the wound that never fully healed. Fans remember what happened in 2014, when Rollins drove that steel chair into Roman's back and fractured the Shield into history. They remember Dean's fury, Roman's silence, and Seth's smirk. But what they don't always remember is what came before: the nights in hotel rooms, 3 deep on the road, the fights in diners over who paid the bill, the shared dream that someday, they wouldn't just be WWE champions. They'd be legends, and now, one of them is lying on an operating table, his dream put on pause. For Roman, it's not just about titles anymore. He's conquered the main event. He's conquered the bloodline. But this? This is personal, and perhaps that's why reports are beginning to leak, quietly, in whispers, that Roman Reigns is preparing to make a move that no one predicted, not for power, not for revenge, but for respect. There's talk, unconfirmed, but persistent, that Roman has requested a private segment be added to the post-SummerSlam Raw. A tribute. Not to a fallen enemy, but to a fallen brother. If true, it would be the first time Roman publicly acknowledges Seth Rollins in over 2 years, and it wouldn't be part of a feud, it would be part of a farewell, because make no mistake, Seth's recovery is going to be long. Painful. Uncertain. There are whispers among medical staff that the damage to his knee is more complex than the WWE is admitting publicly. That it's not just a torn ligament, it's a question of structural stability. In other words, will he ever be the same? That's the question haunting fans. But for Ambrose and Reigns, the question is deeper. Was this preventable? Dean hinted at it in his message. That maybe they pushed too hard. That maybe the business they love is built to break the people who give it everything. That Seth Rollins, the man who never missed a date, who carried Raw on his back week after week, was finally crushed by the weight of his own loyalty. Ambrose said he didn't know when to stop. He didn't want to stop. Because that's who Seth is. He shows up, even when his body's already waving the white flag. And now, the flag has been planted and someone else has to carry it. But who? Because with Seth out, Roman wandering in ambiguity, and Dean on the outskirts of WWE, the future feels uncertain. Hollow. Some fans believe this tragedy might do what months of storytelling couldn't: bring the brothers together again. Not for a match, not for a main event, but for a moment. A reckoning, because when a pillar falls, the rest of the house either crumbles or rebuilds, and tonight, it feels like we're watching that choice unfold in real time. One WWE official, anonymous, but close to creative, revealed this: there's a growing conversation about using Seth's absence not just as a storyline beat, but as a pivot point. Something more real. Something that touches on the legacy of the Shield and what it cost all 3 of them. Could we be approaching a reunion? Not in the ring, but in meaning. There's precedent. Wrestling, at its best, mirrors real life. Pain becomes plot. Absence becomes motivation. Loss becomes heat, and right now, Seth's injury has cracked something open. Dean's message lit the fuse. Roman's silence is deafening, and SummerSlam, which was once poised to be Rollins' crowning achievement, may now become a crossroads. Because here's the truth. You don't build WWE's most iconic faction of the modern era without paying the price. You don't carry a company on your shoulders for 10 years without your knees giving out. You don't walk away from a brotherhood without part of you getting left behind. And that's what Dean was really saying: not just that Seth is hurt, but that they all are, that beneath the gold, the pyro, and the promos, they are still men. Still friends. Still something more than just characters on a weekly show. They are brothers, and right now, one of them has fallen. So now, the world waits to see if Ambrose resurfaces, waits to see if Roman returns with words, waits to see if the Shield, fractured, bruised, but not forgotten, will find its way back to each other, not for glory, but for closure. Because sometimes the biggest stories in wrestling aren't written in the ring, they're written in the silences, in the shadows, in the things we don't say, until it's almost too late. And this might be that moment. 3 weeks later, the crowd at Monday Night Raw was electric, but confused. No advertised match. No pyro. No music. Just lights dimming and commentary falling quiet. And then, like a whisper from the past, it happened. Roman Reigns walked out, not flanked by the bloodline. Not crowned in gold. Not holding a microphone like a conqueror, just Roman. In street clothes. Eyes heavy. Face unreadable. Hands trembling ever so slightly. There was no opening theme. No graphics package. Just the sound of a sold-out arena shifting from shock to silenced. It was the first time Reigns had appeared live since news of Seth Rollins' injury broke, and the first time since Dean Ambrose's cryptic video surfaced online, watched over 11 million times on WWE's official channel. There had been no direct reply. No social media post. No press conference. Roman had vanished, fueling speculation that the locker room leader had taken the news harder than anyone expected. Now, he stood in the center of the ring. Not as the tribal chief, not as the Universal Champion, but as Joe Anoa'i, and when he finally lifted the mic to speak, his voice cracked on the first word. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The crowd went silent again. He continued, I wasn't planning to be here tonight. Not like this. I'm not here for a match. I'm not here to call someone out. I'm here because I got the same call you all did. Seth Rollins, the man who's carried Monday Night Raw on his back, who's given his body, soul, and sanity to this business, he's not walking through that curtain tonight. Or next week. Or maybe for a long time. A pause, and then, the truth, he's hurt. And we don't know if he's coming back. The air tightened. I've fought Seth. I've bled with Seth. I've hated Seth. And I've loved him like a brother. Because once upon a time, we were 3 kids in flak jackets who believed we could take over the world. And we did. We tore down walls, broke records, redefined this business. We were the Shield. The crowd erupted. Shield. 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 Roman nodded, but nothing lasts forever. And sometimes, we break ourselves trying to hold on to what's already gone. He looked down for a moment. I've been quiet since it happened. Not because I didn't care. But because I didn't know how to care. I didn't know what to say. Because when you've spent your whole life being strong, grief doesn't fit the script. And then, in a moment no one expected, Roman did something no one had ever seen him do on live TV. He choked back tears. You can boo. You can cheer. I don't care, he said, voice tightening. But understand this, Seth Rollins isn't just a superstar. He's my brother. And if he's out, then I'm stepping in, not to replace him. But to honor him. And just like that, the crowd stood up. Thank you, Roman. Thank you, Roman. But that wasn't the end, because what happened next sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling world. As Roman turned to leave the ring, the camera cut abruptly backstage. A figure in a hoodie. Face shadowed. A bag slung over one shoulder. Walking through the corridor like a man with unfinished business, the commentators went silent. Then stumbled over their words. Wait, is that? The crowd was murmuring now. The man stopped. Slowly turned to the camera and removed the hood. It was Dean Ambrose, not Jon Moxley, not the Death Rider Dean. Ambrose. In WWE again. The arena detonated. Not with cheers. With shock. Disbelief. A WE.no music played. No words were said. Just one shot, Ambrose, standing in front of a door marked Reigns, private locker room. He knocked once, twice, and walked in. The feed cut to black. That was it.no backstage brawl. No staged confrontation. No angle to sell, just a door opening that had been closed for far too long. That night, WWE trended globally. #Ambrose returns. #The Shield. #for Seth. Triple H refused to comment in the post-show press scrum. When asked if this was scripted, he simply said, there are some things you don't write. You just feel. But sources backstage tell a deeper story, that Ambrose's return was not officially sanctioned. That he arrived earlier that afternoon unannounced, spoke briefly with WWE Legal, and requested a single private moment with Roman, and possibly a camera crew, but only if Roman agreed. He did, and now, the WWE universe is spiraling with questions. Is Ambrose back full-time? Is this the return of the Shield? Is Seth Rollins' injury the event that finally reunites the most iconic brotherhood in WWE's modern history? Or is this something else entirely, a goodbye. A reckoning. A redefinition of legacy? Because what we're seeing unfold now is not just a reaction to a superstar being injured, it's the unraveling of 10 years of history. Of grudges buried but never forgotten. Of promises made when the arena was empty and only the three of them stood under the flickering lights. Dean once said, "We're not friends. We're brothers. And brothers don't always get along. But they don't walk away when it counts." Maybe this is that moment. Maybe this is when Dean didn't walk away, and maybe, just maybe, when the time is right, Seth Rollins will walk back through that curtain. Not alone. Not as a champion. But as a brother, because in this business, matches end, legacies fade, but brotherhood, that's forever. The following week's episode of Monday Night Raw was the highest rated of the year. Not because of a main event. Not because of a surprise return during a match. But because of one locker room door and what happened behind it. The world had seen Dean Ambrose walk into Roman Reigns' private room. But WWE cameras didn't follow him in. There was no footage. No audio. No explanation. And for 7 days, fans had only questions. What did they say? Was it a reunion, a confrontation, or just closure? Now, with the crowd breathless and commentary silent, WWE opened the show without the usual spectacle. No cold open. No video package, just a dimly lit ring. 2 chairs. And 2 microphones. Then came the first moment. Dean Ambrose. He walked out alone, no music, the same hooded sweatshirt from last week. The same duffel bag. No theatrics. Just footsteps, slow, deliberate, toward the spotlight. He sat down in one chair. And waited. Then came the second. Roman Reigns. He didn't wear his tribal chief shirt. He didn't hold a belt. He came out in a black t-shirt that read in plain, bold font, "For Seth." The crowd erupted. Roman entered the ring slowly and sat in the other chair. For a full 10 seconds, neither man spoke. The weight of a decade rested between them. Then Dean leaned forward. "You look the same," he said. Roman smirked. "You look worse." The crowd laughed, gently, nervously, but then Dean's face turned serious. "I'm not here to make you laugh," he said. "I'm here because something broke. And for the first time in a long time. I felt it." Roman nodded. "You think I didn't?" he replied. "I watched that footage 100 times. Seth's knee twisted. His body dropped. And I felt it like my own leg gave out." Dean clenched his jaw. "Because it was yours." Another pause. This wasn't a promo. This was grief therapy. Live. Ambrose took a breath. "When we started this thing, The Shield, we weren't playing characters. We weren't selling t-shirts. We were 3 guys with chips on our shoulders and nothing to lose." He glanced at the crowd. "We thought we were bulletproof." Roman looked down. "Quiet," Dean continued. "And then Seth turned. And I turned. And you built an empire. We stopped being brothers. We started being enemies. But you know what I realized last week?" He looked Roman in the eye. "We were all just running." Roman met his gaze. "Running from what?" Dean leaned back. "From the truth. That no matter how far we go, we're still tied to each other. Not by belts. Not by brands. By pain. By blood. And by the fact that the only people who will ever understand what it took to build the Shield is us." The arena was dead quiet now. Roman picked up his mic. "You said you felt it when Seth got hurt." "So did I. And it scared me," he admitted. "Because for the first time in years, I didn't care about titles or matches. I cared about him." Dean looked down at the mat. "I cared too," he said quietly. "But I didn't show it. Not when I left. Not when I torched what we built. I walked away. Thought it was strength." Roman leaned forward. "No," he said. "That was fear." They both paused. Then Ambrose asked the question no one expected. "You want to fix it?" The crowd gasped. Roman hesitated. Then nodded. "Yeah," he said. "For him." The moment didn't need more words. Dean stood up, Roman followed, and in front of a stunned global audience, the two men embraced, not as wrestlers, not as champions, as brothers, and just like that, the Shield, broken, bruised, missing a third, was alive again. Not in combat, but in spirit. The screen faded to black. No logo. No sponsors, just 3 words, for Seth Rollins. But while the WWE Universe was celebrating what felt like history rewriting itself, behind the curtain, chaos had erupted. Triple H was furious. Sources confirmed that neither Ambrose's appearance nor the in-ring segment with Roman was fully cleared by WWE Creative. It wasn't in the script. It wasn't on the run sheet. It wasn't even pitched to production until 30 minutes before the show aired. Security was told not to interfere, and camera crews were told to stay out of the way. Why? Because Roman Reigns made the call. Reportedly, Reigns, still regarded as the most powerful locker room figure in the company, went directly to WWE's executive board and demanded the segment happen, not for ratings, not for clicks, but because, as one source said, he couldn't sit back and watch the history of the Shield get written without a final word. That same source revealed Triple H felt blindsided, not by Roman's intent, but by the method. This was unsanctioned, they said. Dean Ambrose wasn't under contract. This segment could have exposed WWE legally. But that's not what happened. Instead, WWE stock rose 2.4% the next morning. Fan forums exploded, and the #Forsyth movement began trending worldwide. WWE issued a brief statement. WWE respects the legacy of Seth Rollins and the emotional connection our performers share. Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose's segment was a tribute, and the company supports all efforts to honor Seth during this recovery. But internally, it was anything but peaceful. Because now, Triple H had a problem. Dean Ambrose was back, Roman Reigns had broken script, and the crowd was demanding a full Shield reunion. Point 1 that wasn't in the plans. Point 1 that was never supposed to happen, and one that could change the trajectory of WWE for years.